The last signal. The air recyclers wheezed like dying animals in the depths of mining station Xerion 7. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her ear against the metal housing, listening to the irregular rhythm that had kept 800 souls breathing for the past 93 days. The sound was getting weaker. "How much longer?" asked Zephyr, the young Villani engineer whose blue-scaled hands never seemed to stop moving. Even now, as they huddled in the maintenance tunnel, his fingers danced across a damaged circuit board with desperate precision. Elena pulled back from the machine and wiped sweat from her forehead. The underground bunkers were hot, cramped, and filled with the smell of too many bodies in too small a space. "Maybe 6 hours before the main unit fails completely," she said quietly. "The backup might give us another day." Zephyr's large amber eyes reflected the dim emergency lighting. His people, the Villani, were known throughout the galaxy for their engineering skills. Their delicate features and naturally curious nature made them excellent researchers and builders, but even Zephyr's talents couldn't work miracles with broken equipment and no spare parts. "The children are asking about their parents again," he whispered, his voice carrying the weight of responsibility that no 20-year-old should bear. Elena nodded. She had been hearing the same questions for weeks. Families separated during the initial Korthak attack. Parents who had stayed behind to buy time for their children to reach the bunkers. Lovers who had promised to find each other when the danger passed. Most of those promises would never be kept. The Korthak Empire had arrived at Xerion 7 like a plague of locusts. Their insectoid warriors, standing 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and chitinous armor, had overwhelmed the small mining colony in hours. The mixed population of humans, Villani, Gorvani, and dozens of other species, had barely managed to seal themselves in the old mining tunnels before the slaughter began above. "Dr. Vasquez?" The call echoed through the narrow passage. Elena recognized the voice of Nira, a Gorvani nurse who had been helping tend to the wounded. "Commander Thask is asking for you." Elena exchanged a look with Zephyr. Commander Thask was the highest-ranking military officer among the survivors, a grizzled Gorvani veteran whose thick, gray-skinned frame bore the scars of a dozen campaigns. He had taken shrapnel to the chest during the evacuation and had been fighting infection ever since. They made their way through the maze of tunnels, past families huddled together in small alcoves carved from the rock. Children of various species played quietly in the dim light, their games a heartbreaking echo of normal childhood. Parents watched with hollow eyes that had seen too much death. The Gorvani were a proud warrior race, their broad shoulders and heavy builds perfect for combat. But even they had been unprepared for the Korthak's brutality. Elena had watched strong Gorvani soldiers weep as they described the systematic destruction of everything they had built on Xerion 7. Commander Thask lay on a makeshift bed of salvaged cushions in what had once been a storage room. His breathing was shallow, and his normally gray skin had taken on a sickly blue tint. "Doctor," he rasped as Elena knelt beside him, "the comm system is failing." Elena's heart sank. The communications array was their only connection to the outside galaxy, their only hope that someone might hear their distress calls. "What happened?" "Power fluctuations damaged the primary transmitter," Thask explained. "We have perhaps one more chance to send out a signal before it dies completely." The weight of decision pressed down on Elena's shoulders. She had never asked to be a leader. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms and wrote research papers. But when the colony's administrators had died in the first attack, and the military officers had fallen one by one to wounds and disease, the survivors had naturally looked to her for guidance. "What should we say?" asked Nira, her elongated Gorvani features creased with worry. Elena closed her eyes and thought about the 800 people depending on her. Men, women, and children from a dozen different worlds, all united by their desperate situation. Some had been born on Xerion 7 and had never known another home. Others were researchers, miners, traders who had simply been in the wrong place when the Korthak struck. "We tell them we're still here," Elena said finally. "We tell them we're not giving up." The communication center was located in the deepest, part of the bunker complex, protected by layers of rock and salvaged armor plating. The room hummed with the sound of jury-rigged equipment held together by hope and Villani engineering genius. Zephyr worked alongside two other engineers, their hands moving in perfect synchronization as they coaxed life from dying circuits. "Ready," announced Kess, an elderly Villani whose scales had faded to pale silver with age. "But this is the last time. After this transmission, the whole system will overload." Elena stepped up to the microphone, feeling the weight of 800 pairs of eyes watching her even though most of the survivors were scattered throughout the tunnels. She thought about the distress calls they had been sending for months, messages that disappeared into the vast emptiness of space without reply, and why. Korthak had cut off all official communication channels weeks ago. The Galactic Council was too far away to help, and most of the nearby systems had already fallen to the Insectoid Empire. Elena knew that their situation was hopeless, but she couldn't bring herself to tell the survivors that no one was coming. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of Mining Station Zerion 7, she began, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "We are 800 survivors of multiple species trapped in the underground bunkers. We have been under siege by Korthak forces for 93 days. Our life support systems are failing, and we estimate less than 36 hours before complete failure." She paused, listening to the static that filled the comm channel. Somewhere in the background, she could hear the distant rumble of Korthak machinery above ground. They were still there, still waiting, like patient predators who knew their prey, had nowhere to run. "We have wounded among us, including children," Elena continued. "We are not military targets. We are civilians, researchers, families. If anyone receives this message, please remember that we tried to survive. We tried to help each other. We never gave up hope." The transmission ended with a soft click. Kess looked up from his instruments and shook his head sadly. "The transmitter is dead," he confirmed. "We are completely cut off now." Elena nodded and tried to smile reassuringly at the gathered engineers. "Thank you for everything you've done. All of you. Get some rest." As the others filed out of the communications room, Elena remained behind, staring at the silent equipment. She thought about her life before Zerion 7, her research on interspecies cooperation, her belief that different races could work together to build something better than what any could achieve alone. The survivors in these tunnels proved that belief was real. Humans worked alongside Gorvani warriors. Villani engineers shared their knowledge with species they had never met before. Children of different races played together, as if physical differences meant nothing at all. If they were going to die down, here at least they would die as one people. "Doctor," Zephyr had returned carrying a small device in his hands. "I found something in the old mining equipment. It's a seismic detector, but I think I can modify it to pick up ship engines." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You think someone might actually come?" The young Villani's expression was uncertain. "I don't know. But if ships enter the system, this might detect them before the Korthak do. It would give us some warning." Elena looked at the device, then at Zephyr's hopeful face. She had spent weeks trying to balance hope with reality, trying to keep spirits up while preparing for the worst possible outcome. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to believe in miracles. "Set it up," she said. "Monitor all frequencies." Hours passed. The air recyclers continued their labored breathing. Children cried softly in the darkness. Adults whispered prayers in a dozen different languages. Elena made her rounds through the tunnels, checking on the wounded, offering what comfort she could to families who had lost everything. Commander Thask was getting worse. His fever had broken, but infection was spreading through his system faster than their limited medical supplies could fight it. Nira worked tirelessly beside his bed, but Elena could see the defeat in the nurse's eyes. "Doctor," Thask whispered during one of Elena's visits, "when the end comes, will you make sure they remember we fought?" Elena squeezed his massive hand. "You're not dying, Commander, not yet." He smiled weakly. "I've been a soldier for 40 years. I know when the battle is lost." "The battle isn't over," Elena insisted. "As long as we're breathing, we keep fighting." Thask's eyes closed, but his hand tightened slightly around hers. "Then we fight. The seismic detector remained silent through the night. Elena tried to sleep but found herself pacing the tunnels instead, checking and rechecking their meager defenses. They had sealed most of the entrances with rubble and metal plating, but if the Korthak decided to dig them out, their barriers wouldn't hold for long. Dawn came and went unnoticed in the artificial twilight of the bunkers. The air recyclers gave a final shuddering wheeze and fell silent. Emergency power kicked in, but Elena knew they had hours at most before carbon dioxide poisoning began to take its toll. She was sitting with a group of children trying to keep them calm, when Zephyr's voice echoed through the tunnels. Dr. Vasquez, come quickly." Elena ran through the narrow passages, her heart pounding. She found Zephyr in the communications room staring at his improvised seismic detector with wide, disbelieving eyes. "What is it?" Elena asked breathlessly. Zephyr looked up at her, his amber eyes bright with something she hadn't seen in months. "Hope ships," he whispered. "Massive engine signatures dropping out of hyperspace. They're not Korthak designs." Elena stared at the readings, afraid to believe what she was seeing. "How many?" "At least 50, Zephyr replied, his voice growing stronger. "Maybe more. They're moving fast directly toward the planet." Elena's hands trembled as she reached for the dead communication system, wishing desperately that she could send one more message. "Can you tell what kind of ships they are?" Zephyr worked frantically with his instruments, fine-tuning the sensors. His face suddenly broke into a wide smile, showing the pointed teeth that all Villani possessed. "Human," he said simply. "They're human ships." The news spread through the tunnels like wildfire. 800 voices rose in a chorus of hope and disbelief. Families embraced. Children laughed for the first time in months. Even Commander Thask managed to sit up on his makeshift bed. Elena felt tears running down her cheeks as she listened to the celebration echoing through the bunkers. She had sent their final message into the void, never expecting anyone to answer. But somehow, impossibly, help had come. Above ground, the sound of battle had begun. Explosions shook the tunnel walls as human ships engaged the Korthak forces that had held them prisoner for so long. Elena pressed her hand against the stone wall and felt the vibrations of combat, each blast bringing them closer to freedom. "Doctor," said Nira, appearing at Elena's side, "the children are asking if the humans will really help us. They want to know if we're safe." Elena looked around at the faces surrounding her, at the hope shining in eyes that had seen too much. Darkness. She thought about the message she had sent, about her words disappearing into space, about the faith she had tried to maintain even when everything seemed lost. "Tell them," Elena said, her voice strong and clear, "that humans don't leave anyone behind. When humans answer the call, Captain." Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the tactical display as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Xerion system. 53 ships materialized from the swirling tunnel, of faster-than-light travel, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive blue and silver of the United Earth Space Force. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Sarah Park from the communications station. "I'm reading multiple Korthak vessels in high orbit around Xerion 7, at least 24 heavy cruisers and supporting craft." Marcus nodded grimly. The Korthak Empire had been expanding aggressively for the past 5 years, consuming entire systems and enslaving or exterminating the populations they found. Earth had been preparing for eventual conflict with the insectoid species, but this rescue operation was humanity's first major engagement. "Time to intercept?" Marcus asked his navigator. 18 minutes at current speed, came the reply. Marcus activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is Captain Chen to all vessels. We received a distress call from civilians trapped on Xerion 7. Our mission is simple: eliminate the Korthak presence and extract every survivor we can find. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show these insects what happens when they threaten innocent people." The response was immediate. 53 ship captains acknowledged the orders, their voices carrying the same mix of determination and controlled anger that Marcus felt in his own chest. The message from Dr. Elena Vasquez had reached Earth 3 days ago. carried by an automated probe that had somehow escaped the Korthak blockade. 800 civilians of multiple species, trapped underground, running out of time. "Sir," called Commander Sarah Torres from the tactical station. "The Korthak are moving to intercept, they're not running." Marcus smiled coldly. "Good. I was hoping they'd want to fight." The Korthak vessels were impressive in their own way. Sleek, organic-looking ships that resembled enormous insects, their hulls black as space itself and covered in weapon emplacements that glowed with an ominous red light. They moved with surprising grace for their size, forming attack formations that spoke of practiced coordination, but they had never faced human ships in open combat. "All vessels execute Phoenix formation," Marcus ordered. "Target their flagships first. Let's see how they handle coordinated fire." The human fleet spread, out like the fingers of a giant hand, each group of ships targeting a different section of the Korthak formation. The UES Defiant led the central thrust, its heavy plasma cannons charging with a low hum that Marcus could feel in his bones. The first exchange of fire lit up the void between the opposing fleets. Korthak energy beams lanced out like deadly ribbons, while human missiles streaked across the darkness in perfectly synchronized volleys. The display was beautiful and terrible, a deadly dance performed on the grandest possible stage. "Direct hit on the lead Korthak vessel," reported Torres. "Their shields are down to 60%. "Continue firing," Marcus replied. "Target their engine sections. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need to get past them quickly." The battle was fierce but brief. Human technology, refined through decades of preparation for this exact scenario, proved superior to Korthak weaponry. Within minutes, half the enemy fleet was disabled or destroyed, and the remainder was retreating toward the outer system. "Pursuing vessels report in," Marcus called over the fleet communication channel. "This is Captain Johnson of the Yorktown. We're in pursuit of the fleeing Korthak ships. We'll keep them busy while you handle the ground operation." Acknowledged. "Good hunting, Yorktown." Marcus turned his attention to the planet below. Zerion 7 was a harsh world, mostly desert and mountain ranges with small pockets of habitability where the mining operations had been established. The main colony site was visible as a cluster of structures on the northern continent, but thermal imaging showed extensive Korthak ground forces surrounding the area. "Torres, take a team and prepare for ground assault," Marcus ordered. "I want you to find those survivors and get them out. Take whatever you need." Commander Sarah Torres was exactly the right person for this mission. A veteran of the Mars Colonial conflicts and the Europa incident, she combined tactical brilliance with an absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen combat and never flinched. "I'll need the 7th Marines and full medical support," Torres said. "If these people have been underground for 3 months, they're going to need immediate attention." "Done. How long until you can deploy?" Torres checked her chronometer. "Give me 20 minutes to brief the teams and load the dropships. We'll be on the ground in 45 minutes. As Torres hurried off to prepare her assault force, Marcus remained on the bridge coordinating with the other ships in his fleet. Some would remain in orbit to prevent Korthak reinforcements from arriving. Others would provide orbital fire support for the ground operation. The rest would begin search and rescue operations in the surrounding area, looking for any other survivors who might have escaped the initial attack. Down on Zerion 7, the Korthak had fortified their positions around the sealed mining tunnels. Thermal imaging showed hundreds of the insectoid warriors dug into defensive positions, their weapons trained on the tunnel entrances. They knew the humans were coming, and they were ready for a fight. But they weren't ready for what Torres had planned. "Alpha Team, you're going in from the north," Torres explained to her assault force as they gathered in the dropship bay. "Bravo Team takes the eastern approach. Charlie Team is with me on the direct assault from the south. The Korthak expect us to try to break through their lines, so that's exactly what we're going to do." The Marines nodded, checking their weapons and equipment. These were some of Earth's finest soldiers, volunteers who had trained specifically for combat against alien species. Their armor was sleek and flexible, designed to provide maximum protection while maintaining mobility. Their weapons were the latest plasma rifles, capable of penetrating even Korthak chitinous armor. "What about the civilians, Commander?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez, Torres's second-in-command. "If we go in shooting, we might cause tunnel collapses." Torres smiled. "That's why we brought these." She held up a small device that looked like a combination of a scanner and a communicator. "Seismic resonators. We can map the tunnel system and identify exactly where the survivors are located. Then we create a distraction, while a smaller team extracts them through a secondary entrance." The dropships launched from the fleet with military precision, racing toward the planet's surface at maximum speed. Torres watched through the viewport as Zarian 7 grew larger, its barren landscape scarred by the evidence of Korthak occupation. Smoke rose from the destroyed colony buildings, and she could see the distinctive geometric patterns that the insectoids carved into the ground around their encampments. 2 minutes to landing zone," announced the pilot. Torres activated her suit's communication system. "All teams, remember your training. The Korthak are tough, but they're not invincible. Aim for the joints in their armor. Keep moving. Watch your teammates' backs, and remember why we're here." The dropships touched down in a shower of dust and debris. The Marines deployed with practiced efficiency, spreading out into their assigned formations and advancing toward the Korthak positions. Torres led Charlie Team directly toward the main tunnel entrance, her plasma rifle ready. The first Korthak appeared around a pile of rubble, its 8-foot frame covered in gleaming black armor. The creature's mandibles clicked as it raised its weapon, but Torres was faster. Her shot took the alien in the center of its thorax, dropping it before it could return fire. "Contact," she called over the comm system. "Multiple Korthak positions, ahead. Alpha and Bravo teams, begin your flanking maneuvers." The battle was intense but brief. The Korthak were fierce fighters, but they had been expecting a siege, not a rapid assault by superior forces. Human tactics, honed through years of study and preparation, systematically dismantled their defensive positions. While her Marines engaged the main Korthak force, Torres led a small team toward a ventilation shaft that her sensors had identified as a possible entrance to the tunnel system. The shaft was narrow and partially collapsed, but it would have to do. "Resonator readings show approximately 800 life signs below us," reported Corporal Kim, Torres's electronics specialist. "They're spread throughout a complex tunnel network, but most are concentrated in 3 main areas." Torres nodded and activated her suit's external speakers. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, if you can hear me, this is Commander Sarah Torres of the United Earth Space Force. We received your distress call. We're here to get you out." The response came almost immediately, crackling through the damaged communication systems deep in the tunnels. "Commander Torres, this is Dr. Vasquez. We have 800 survivors down here, including wounded and children. Our life support systems failed 6 hours ago. We're running out of time." "Not anymore, Doctor. We're coming to get you. Can you guide us to your location?" There was a pause, and then Torres heard something in Dr. Vasquez's voice that she recognized from her own experiences in combat. Relief. Hope. The sound of someone who had given up expecting rescue but had never stopped fighting. "Follow the main tunnel system east for about 200 meters, then take the third branch to the south. We've sealed most of the passages, but we can open them for you." Torres and her team descended into the tunnel system, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The air was stale and thin, thick with the smell of too many people in too small a space. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, they began to encounter the survivors. The first group they found was a family of Villani, their blue scales dull, with exhaustion and malnutrition. The parents clutched their children close, staring at the human soldiers with wide, disbelieving eyes. "It's okay," Torres said gently, removing her helmet so they could see her face. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The Villani father spoke in halting standard. You came for us? But we are not human." Torres knelt down to the level of the children, her expression soft. "That doesn't matter. We don't leave people behind. Any people." As they continued through the tunnels, Torres's team encountered more survivors. Humans, Gorvani, Villani, and species she didn't immediately recognize, all united by their desperate situation and their shared relief at seeing rescue finally arrive. They found Dr. Elena Vasquez in the deepest part of the tunnel complex, tending to a wounded Gorvani, who Torres recognized from the intelligence briefings as Commander Thask. The doctor was younger than Torres had expected, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes that held both exhaustion and determination. "Dr. Vasquez," Torres said, extending her hand. "I'm Commander Sarah Torres. We're here to get you home." Elena took her hand and smiled, tears running down her cheeks. "I never thought. We sent that message thinking no one would hear it." "Someone always hears," Torres replied. "That's what humans do. We listen and we answer." The extraction took 6 hours. Torres's Marines established a secure perimeter, while medical teams treated the most seriously wounded survivors. The tunnel system proved to be more extensive than initially thought, with survivors scattered throughout dozens of interconnected passages. But they found everyone. 800 people of multiple species, some barely alive, others in better condition, but all marked by months of fear and deprivation. The human medical teams worked alongside Villani engineers and Gorvani warriors, each species contributing their unique skills to the rescue effort. Commander Thask was among the last to be evacuated, carried out on a stretcher but conscious and alert. As Torres walked beside him toward the surface, he grasped her arm with surprising strength. "Why?" he asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Why did your people come for us? We are not your allies. We have no treaties with Earth." Torres paused at the tunnel entrance, looking back at the underground maze where 800 people had fought for survival against impossible odds. Then she looked up at the sky, where human ships waited to carry them all to safety. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "Because when people are in trouble, humans answer the call. That's who we are." As the last survivors were loaded onto the evacuation ships, Torres received a communication from Captain Chen in orbit. "Ground teams, report status." "Mission accomplished, Captain. 800 survivors extracted, all Korthak ground forces neutralized. No human casualties." "Outstanding work, Commander. The fleet is preparing to depart. We've received word that other colonies are requesting assistance." Torres looked around at the faces of the survivors, at the hope that had replaced the despair in their eyes. Dr. Vasquez approached her, carrying a small child who had been orphaned in the attack. "Commander," Elena said, "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank us, Doctor. Just remember this moment. Remember that when the galaxy seems dark, there are still people willing to fight for what's right." Elena nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind Torres's words. The rescue of Zirion 7 was more than just a military operation. It was a statement to the galaxy that humanity would not stand by while innocent people suffered. As the evacuation fleet departed the Zirion system, carrying its precious cargo of survivors to safety, word of the rescue spread throughout the galaxy. Other species, other worlds that had suffered under Korthak occupation, began to hope that they too might find allies in their struggle. The message that Dr. Elena Vasquez had sent into the void had been answered not just with ships and soldiers, but with something far more powerful. It had been answered with the promise that no one would be left behind, that no cry for help would go unanswered, and that humanity would always stand ready to defend those who could not defend themselves. In the depths of space, 800 survivors of a dozen different species looked back at the stars and knew that they were no longer alone. They had been found, they had been saved, and they had learned a truth that would echo throughout the galaxy. When humans say they don't leave anyone behind, they mean everyone.